Well, hey, everybody, it's Scott Christopher. Thanks for joining us here on Call to Create. My guests, if you don't recognize them from their visuals, those of you that are watching this on YouTube or elsewhere, are the incomparable Afterglow, Joel McCausland and Kevin Peay. Thanks for being here, guys.
Oh, thanks, Scott.
Good to see you, Scott.
We are going to be talking with these two legends of the LDS music community. They are two practically lifelong friends from Utah Valley who started as kids in high school singing together. Their harmonies are sweet. For me personally, I'm fanboying right now because, I mean, you must know, I think I may have mentioned it before in a fanboy Facebook message or something, but I mean, to this day, 50, 40 years later, there are songs that I still wake up. I'm having the time of my life, whatever. Like
we should
those aren't the lyrics,
track,
by the way. But I mean, they're still in my head. There wasn't an elder or sister in my mission that didn't have a copy of Someone Is Listening or The Greatest Gift. Those sustained me. You guys sustained me. Certainly when you were just starting, it had to be your main thing because you were everywhere. You were performing all the time and you were recording. And I don't know how it all works in terms of can you make a living off it, blah, blah, blah. How did you get to that point and how quickly did you get there?
I think Joel's probably got the better storyline because
Okay.
It was kind of interesting. So Kevin and I were singing a lot before we left on our missions, and this was in the late 1970s. We graduated high school in '79, and we're singing, but it's mostly for fun. We sang with a couple of girls for a while when we were in high school. We sang at restaurants. We did some of that thing. And we were doing some songs one night at a restaurant. We had a guy come in and he said, "Have you guys ever considered doing a fireside, more of an inspirational thing, And we really hadn't, and we didn't have any kind of catalog of written music. We were definitely looking at the seminary music of the time and some of the other things we'd heard. And so we said, okay, we'll put it together. And we did that. This was probably a year before we left on our mission, wasn't it, Kev?
Now, wait a minute. Playing in restaurants, you're not playing church. I mean, you're doing covers?
No, pop music. Yeah, covers of pop songs. Okay. Anything that was like, all by myself or Mandy or some of those ballads of the day.
Billy Joel, whatever.
Joel is really good at contemporary songs, and he could sit down at a piano and sing any Billy Joel, Barry Manilow, whatever it was. And that was the restaurant basis. I mean, he performed at Jimba's down by BYU
on Main Street.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And old Dan Tucker's in Orem.
Jimba's scared me as a young boy. Like I'd go in and there was that gorilla.
The gorilla, yes.
And the phone booth and all these things. I'm like, this place is just too many sensations. Anxiety.
It was a lot. But, we got a chance to do that. We recorded a little simple thing before we left on our missions. And while we were gone, our moms somehow got some of these little cassette tapes. That's all we had placed in Deseret Book. And unbeknownst to us, really, when we got home, we had a number of sales of those. There was some money in the bank. There was a tax bill from the IRS because nobody thought about that. And so we cleaned that up.
These were originals.
Actually, most of it was still the seminary songs and stuff we just heard over the years. And when we got home, we had an opportunity then to say, do we want to continue to do this? Do we want to try to make something of this? And that's when we started to record. And Someone Is Listening, the first album we put together, really serious album, was the next year.
Joel, can you back up just a little bit?
Sure.
So when those tapes were made, we recorded them on a 4-track with somebody that you knew in Pleasant Grove. And then we had to get clearance for some of the songs from the church,
right,
to be able to record it. And we didn't have enough money to actually pay the fees that the church wanted. And there was somebody in your circle of influence that donated that money to pay the church for the royalties associated.
That's right. Fred Dalton walked up to us after a program one night and said, I know you guys are getting ready to go on your missions, but I want you to record this program. And if you can't do that, then split it and just support your mission work with that. But he gave us some money and that really turned the tide. As Kevin said, it gave us an opportunity to get something recorded and something out in front of people.
And then we were in the MTC together and I get a summons to President Joe Christensen's office. Were you with me? I don't remember. But anyway, I sat in front of him. I remember this vividly. And he says, Elder Peay, He says, I heard you have some tapes. And I said, yes, President. He said, I want to hear them. So I had a copy of Worship in Song,
Which was
and
our fireside program on a cassette tape, basically.
the fireside program. And he said, how do I get these in the MTC bookstore? My mom or your mom delivered some of those tapes and put them in the MTC bookstore, and they found their way to these different parts of the world. The elders and sisters were using them. It was interesting because we got some letters after we came back from our mission of people in the Philippines that had found this cassette tape that an elder and a sister had given them, and they'd heard these songs and they'd written a letter to the P.O. box or something that was on the old cassettes. And then we get home and someone is listening, comes along, and Joel, continue on.
Yeah, I just think that next probably decade or maybe even two, we had as much opportunity to sing and perform as we wanted. And as we got married and started having kids and balancing career and everything else, we kind of had to put some limits on it. We got to the point, I think, where we had, 3 or 4 performances a month, and that was calendared out for about 3 years. So we were pretty busy for quite a while doing that and releasing albums, usually one every year, sometimes more than that. And of course, that's shifted a little as we've gotten older. Now we release them every 3 or 4 years, and we have more time to think about them and write them and do some things. Don't perform quite as much as we used to, but still have opportunities to get out with people. And that's a blessing. I think about over these 40 or 50 years now, as you said, Scott, the blessing of being able to connect with so many people around music and messages, and to feel like you've got some commonalities in terms of your experience. I mean, I might write a song about something I'm going through or I'm seeing someone go through, and that's cool for me. But then if I hear from somebody else that says, wow, that made a difference when I was going through this, that might be the best blessing of the musical experience in my life.
Deseret Book came to us after they had learned of some of the success of the distribution of Someone Is Listening. They came and asked if they could produce our material in 1984. And that was actually, we were the first music artist, I believe, Joel.
With Deseret Book?
With Deseret Book in 1984. And we sang at a breakfast. And then from then on out, it was almost 17 projects with them. And we ran out of things to do, so we decided to do some country. And we'd grown up that way, and we had a little fun country stint through there. Deseret Book.
Did you produce the country stuff out here in Nashville?
Shadow Mountain,
we
which
did.
is Deseret Book sub-brand. Cool. They let us go out because we grew up with boots and jeans and some of that stuff in our normal lives. And
Pleasant Grove, baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Linden, for me,
Linden.
there was a lot of ditches in Linden still at that time, but they let us go out in the RCA Javelina studio, which was where Elvis recorded. We sat on Elvis's Love Me Tender stool that he sang that thing on. And we had these wonderful musicians that were all first call. We had Rob Hajakis with Garth Brooks's and all Brent Rowan and Steve Turner and all these incredible people that did our first country album called Close to Home. And what was happening at that time in our world was we were getting requests to come to county fairs and some of those things. And we're like, well, we need some material that really fits the genre. John Michael Montgomery was out doing a whole lot of stuff with his good Christian country stuff. And so we started writing a little bit of country and performing and finding some songs. And then all of a sudden we realized that that's a pretty big industry and you really got to focus.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, you better commit to it. And we still had a lot of religious stuff in us. And so we've kind of migrated back to the Afterglow thing and had some country stuff on the side.
I sense, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but having now chatted with you a little bit, that you and Joel are not two peas in a pod.
No, he's much more defined.
No, but it's fair to say that we're different people, different lives. We grew up together and certainly have some common background and common upbringing for sure, but we're different in a lot of ways too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just get the sense maybe, I don't know if Kevin, are you as outgoing and showy as Joel is? I mean, Joel's he's a talker. He's got a kind of larger than life thing going on. And again, maybe you do too, but can you comment on that?
Well, Joel graduated in communications, and so that makes sense. Me, I graduated in baseball, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know if we want to chat a little bit about how we met. Joel, I was Pleasant Grove,
Please.
Unified Math, junior high,
So you knew each other even
As early
before you.
as, yeah,
seventh
junior high
grade,
school.
junior high
Yep.
school.
My mother was actually the secretary and librarian at Kevin's Elementary School
Oh,
in
that's
Linden,
right.
Utah.
Wow.
But
Wow.
we probably didn't meet until junior high.
Yeah, and then Mr. Fielding's class, Unified Math, and my life was really athletics. And our junior year, he was singing in an auditorium, and I'd come back from baseball practice, and I was the only one in the hallway, and I was doing something dumb. I figured was probably sliding with my metal cleats on the tile floor, and the janitor was there, and he said, "Don't do that." And so I said, "Okay." I take my shoes off, and I heard some music coming out of the auditorium. And so I walked over to the auditorium, but I can remember starkly now that there was really nobody else except for the janitor in the high school.
I was practicing for an assembly that I was supposed to sing at, and 2 or 3 days later, and just kind of hanging out in the auditorium.
Were you
And we didn't
plunking
know
on
all
the
the lyrics.
piano, or was it a
Yeah.
guitar or piano?
On the piano. My mom was a piano teacher, and the one thing I didn't want, I wanted to learn the piano, but I didn't want my piano teacher to be in the same house as me, because practice would be a bear. She'd always be on me for that. So I made a deal with my mother that if my older brother could teach me chord piano, and if I practiced on my own, I didn't have to take official lessons. That was a good deal at the time, but I kind of miss the fact that I don't know how to play the piano very well now, and I could have done a lot better. But yeah, it worked out okay, and that's how I play it now.
So Kevin, you hear the dulcet tones of Joel and the piano, and what you're drawn to this? You
Well,
leave the jock world behind, and
no, he's not only just playing in the auditorium, he's up on stage with the grand piano. That was the same piano that was there forever in the Pleasant Grove Auditorium. And so, no, I walked in and I said, "Joel," I said, "what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm practicing for an assembly." And this was a point in my life for some reason where I had really basically rebelled in every church choir opportunity my parents tried to get me in. And I just didn't like to sing. I don't know whether it was stage fright or whether I was just in rebellion or whatever it was. But for some reason, when I walked in the auditorium and he's in there playing, something just shifted in me just a little bit. I'm trying to release my pride and simply say, well, God, that's cool. Maybe can I harmonize with you? And all of a sudden, something shifted. And he said, "Well, would you like to perform with me on the assembly?" And I'm like, "Whoa, that's kind of a step into the dark." And so
It's never been described that way, actually.
yeah, well, for me, it was a step into the dark for me, but eventually it came out to be the light. We went through that process. I put a few harmony spots to him, and I decided, okay, let's sing on the assembly. Now, that was an interesting deal. Nobody had a clue. My basketball players and the baseball players, I remember after that was over, I had a few people come up to say, "What in the world do you think you're doing?" And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to go for this. And so we finished that, and I kind of liked it. It was my breakthrough moment. And he has been a real anchor for me to be able to break through. He started to teach me some chords.
Were you already musical? I mean, did you play any instruments? You said you didn't sing, but you were able to harmonize right away.
Well, yeah, I could sing. My parents both could sing, and my dad was choir, and my mom and dad sang a lot. And they just encouraged me to do it. But you just think, I don't know, I just thought different at that time.
But it should be noted that it didn't take Kevin any time to figure out how to sing harmony. He's always had a gift for finding that line through the music that sounded right, and he's got a great tenor voice, and mine's more in the baritone range, and the two of us together, it just was a natural fit.
Hey, I'll tell you, when I'm in the car or when I was on my mission or wherever, I'm always trying to sing Kevin's part.
There you go.
That's the money. You want to go
absolutely.
Well, and
if you can hit those high notes, you got it made.
With this voice, I can hit them.
Yes.
I can't do baritone.
Uh-huh.
And when you talked about, did I ever have any training? I did at 12 years old. I was required to take piano lessons from a great aunt of mine. She was very stern, to the point of oranges in your palms. And if you did it wrong, a ruler over your wrist. And I finally walked to my mom and I said, "Mom, I'm done." At 12 years old, I said, "I can't go through the torture of this."
Literally.
And fortunately, Joel saved me from that by teaching me basic chord structure on the piano. And so I picked that up a little bit, and over the course of time have been able to learn 3 to 4 chords and write, a few songs. And so I'm grateful for that chord structure of inversions. And so that's really where I've taken it. And so he's allowed, me to bring some songs to the table and vice versa. And we've collaborated not on lyrics, nor have we ever really collaborated on music, except when we get into the studio.
You're like the Beatles. You each come in, you say, we're going to start recording on X day, bring your songs, kind of a thing.
In that very tiny way, we might be like the Beatles, but yes, we just showed up. There've been a couple of times we've just started a session at a recording studio somewhere and not having heard the other guy's songs. Like walking in, just knowing it's going to be all right,
and Joel, are you typically the lead, or because I know I've heard Kevin take lead on things,
Kevin's
right?
taken lead on many songs too, and it's kind of been dependent on the project a little bit, and certainly on the song. And there's actually a few songs. This will be a test for the listeners. There's a few songs when there might be multiple voices on the track, but it's only one of us. And when that happens, it's usually Kevin.
We have to say that the arrangers, the Merrill Jensens of the world, the engineers, the Lauren Ashcrafts, the Greg Hansons, the Brett Raymonds, the Michael Dowdles, all of the people that have contributed.
It's awesome because they're so good.
Wow.
And I think for the most part, Joel and I have, we've kind of done this as an avocation. It's kind of our racquetball and tennis and getting out and exercising a little bit. It's our way to give to a certain extent and to breathe some fresh air in the creative environment. So it's been a respite in regards to an oasis to go to in life's trials and in certain things. It's taking the experiences that come and really writing a journal of music and doing our best to produce it to a certain extent.
Now, I was going to ask, in your world, are there one or two songs that are just, the tent pole, everyone asks for these, everyone wants to hear these are the ones that have set us apart, the most requested? What would those be?
I think personally, I Heard Him Come, of course, was one of the first ones we recorded, written by Jeff Goodrich. And we were able to take that and do a couple of versions of that particular song. And of course, that's been a staple. Greatest Gift that Joel wrote has really been a tentpole staple for Afterglow. And that was timing as well as the nature of the song and the content and how it was written from his inspiration from heaven. And I served in Missouri, St. Louis, and Nauvoo, Illinois. And I was asked to write the mission song, and it came out Armor of Truth. And so my mission president was Leon Hartshorn, Dean of Religion at BYU. And he was really focused on armor. And so in my world, there have been 4 songs that have been armor themed, and they were Armor of Truth and then Warriors of Light. And we've had a lot of requests for Warriors of Light because it's just more of a cadence. And it's got a little more Captain Moroni to it. It's got a little more Joshua marching around the city. It's some of that stuff. And then there was a couple of others that were written. But Warriors of Light, we've had a lot of requests for that over the course of time too. Yeah. Joel, do you have others?
Well, it's interesting to think about that. We were absolutely blessed by discovering I Heard Him Come, and that's not a song we wrote, as you mentioned. We probably closed every fireside for 20 years with I Heard Him Come. It was the song, and you'd start singing it, and people would just light up.
I heard him come. I saw his.
And actually, so here we are, not just one generation, but several generations away now. I did a fireside for a group of YSA members of our stake about a year ago. And I sang that song, and I would guess that maybe 90% of them had never heard it before. And it had exactly the same effect.
Same effect, exactly.
People hear it, and they were melting, in their chairs because of the power of that message. So I think about songs like that have sort of had that kind of an impact on me personally. And then hopefully when you sing them, you see a little of that reflected in somebody else's face. And there's a song I wrote called Just Believe Him. That one to me has always had a resonance about it. And because I write a lot about stuff that I struggle with, some of the stuff ends up staying personal to me longer than it does the listener, I think,
I doubt it. I mean, how they say when you write a song, it sort of becomes, it's almost like it's public property.
Yeah.
in a sense. I mean, you
Yeah.
own it, you've got the copyrights, you've got all of that. But I mean, just believe him, you never da da da. I mean, it's a beautiful melody. The words always hit me. Armor of Truth, holy cow. When you're sitting there arranging it, producing it, and you add in ba 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 ba. I mean, that little horn right there, it like, and then there's that it stop down, and then dun, it's like, and it's very dated, you know.
Sure. Sure. Yes.
But I'm telling you, a sword and a shield, they're very anthemic, and especially for missionaries. But even now, I've been home for almost 40 years or whatever it is, and I'm telling you, I still will turn those on Sundays, and I will pop them in, drive into a meeting, and it's just like courage, honor, power, like. So let's just transition now a little bit and talk about being artists and being creators, having abilities and talents, and whether or not you started your life that this was where you were headed and this is my dream. Joel, it sounds like you were at least gearing yourself to head down this path, and Kevin sort of discovered it a little later. But I mean, talk a little bit about the balance, because both of you have mentioned a couple of times, you've at least alluded to the fact that this was a sidelight, and throughout most of your life, that you have other careers, that you went to school, you graduated. What else have you done, and how do you position being a recording and performing artist in your CV, in your resume? When you look back on a career, do you see yourself as a Franklin Covey executive or whatever, sales rep? I don't even know what you do there anymore. Or do you see yourself as a performer artist who did that to make a living so that he could fuel his art?
Yeah, great question, actually, and certainly something that we both kind of managed and navigated through our lives. I never really thought about starting out, oh, I want to be an artist per se. We had some opportunities that kind of moved us in that direction and had some demand for some music. And, the idea of writing a song when I was in high school, I wouldn't even know where to begin. And it was only as I got a little older and started thinking about stuff a little more deeply, and you start thinking, well, yeah, you could express yourself that way. But to your point, we've always had full-time jobs. I was at Franklin Covey for about 10 years, and I've always been in kind of training and people development and presentation. I'm going to be in Nashville Thursday to deliver a day-long training there. So I do some of that stuff today for the company I work for, and that's kind of what's always fueled life. But gosh, we really have been so blessed to be able to continue to do the music. We joke about it now. We do albums every 4 or 5 years. Maybe nobody else cares about them but us, but it's an opportunity for us to continue to share the stuff that's in our heart and hopefully come up with some music that other people will like. And so, the balance, there have been times when that's been challenging, but for the most part, it's just been additive to our lives in my experience. It's just given us an avenue and an expression that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise had.
That's cool. Kevin?
When I finally graduated, I'd been in business before. Again, this was an outlet for me to be able to move on, and we've just always been able to stay connected through the process. And the income of the business and those decisions have allowed time and effort to continue on in the music side. And so fortunately, we have not, in our worlds, my world specifically, have not starved because we haven't had a publisher all the way along the way. And so we've been able to a little bit free flow and less anxiety in regards to where that next paycheck might be coming from, associated with just the necessities of life. And maybe in our world, that's helped in that creative push and being able to keep it alive. We've been very fortunate along the way to be able to find new ways to keep things alive, such as the distribution side of things and how we've reorganized some of the products and some of the blessings that have come through rights transfers and some of the things that we're doing to continue that on. So the studio is still as expensive as it's ever been. And we now have a trickle effect of royalty, but we're trying to be smart with that to be able to put it into future use to continue on to go back into the studio. So everything that we're currently doing now is sharing a message and trying to be as frugal as possible and be able to bank that, to move it forward, to create new and more songs and more albums. So we're doing it all ourselves. Really now, we don't have a publisher, but we've tried to do it in such a way that we've learned a lot about the new digital distributions. We're not very good at social media, but we're learning. We're learning about websites.
You have a podcast too, don't you?
We just started a podcast.
Just launched.
It just barely, I just got an email from Apple that said that it was approved yesterday, and we're up on Apple and Amazon and iHeart, but we've been learning that as we go. We haven't learned that from anybody. And there's people out there that you can pay a lot of money to do that stuff for you. And I'm like, whoa, okay, well, that's going to require a mortgage, or that's going to require, going to get a third job or something to pay that. So we've just kind of tried to figure this out on our own.
Yeah. We're kind of winding down our time here, but I think the three of us share a similar background in that way. That's always been sort of the advice that I've given anyone who's come to me and said, how do I do what you do? And I said, I don't know, but when you find out, will you tell me? Because there's no one specific recipe or course that you follow to succeed in anything, much less the arts. And certainly, I finished my college education. I've worked in business and done all kinds of things, because it feels like however the Lord wants to use me to reach out and affect people in some positive ways, that's probably not going to be a cash cow. That's not going to put food on the table necessarily. It might for a little while, but over the long haul, I'm going to be smart about this. And it sounds like you guys have done the same, to sort of position what you've done and say, this is something that we do on the side, if you will, when we have time and when we need it, for us, just to kind of recharge. But to be able to then say, oh, and by the way, this little thing that we do on the side has positively impacted the lives of thousands and thousands of people. You've probably inspired and spawned several generations of LDS recording artists. The fact that you were the first ones to sign with Deseret Book in the late 70s or early 80s, and you look back and you see all the gazillions of groups and bandlets and duets and other things that have come. I mean, do you take a certain amount of humble pride in that, or does that even occur to you?
Well, I think from my perspective, we are grateful that we had some initial opportunities, and Deseret Book and Shadow Mountain felt like that there was a sustainability there that could perpetuate future artists, that could be its own entity that would help others come along. Michael McLean was right behind. I mean, and Michael was, how amazing this man is, and what he has done and continues to do. Maybe we had a little bit of help, I guess you might say, or we helped other things get going in that music world of Deseret Book. And so I'm grateful for that personally, that if you're going to help be a pioneer, you need to pay it forward. And so now we're trying to do the best we can to pay it forward and help others when they ask, and tell the story a little bit more.
Yeah, I kind of marvel at it too, because honestly, and Scott, I'll actually use you as a corollary to this. Like, you're a versatile guy. You can do anything in the arts. You act and you can perform and you can get on stage and you can do work like I do, like in the training world, and do it in an entertaining way, which is awesome. And I've always respected and admired that about what you do. And as we've done our music over the years, there have been a lot of people who have rightly said that we are really simple in our musical approach, like overly simple sometimes. We don't really know that much musical theory. We're not serious students of music or graduates in musical composition. We don't know any of that stuff. And I think, wow, how lucky it has been that we've found an audience of people who would listen to the little simple things we could put together. And even more so, how lucky we are to have worked with so many people who really are good at what they do, whether it was here in Nashville or London or wherever. We've been so changed and blessed by the fact that I can write a simple song at my piano and it's got holes and flaws all over in it from a musical perspective. And then we give it to somebody and they turn it into something beautiful. And then we get to go back and sing it, which is even more awesome. We could not have asked for a better way for what we were trying to do at the beginning to turn out, just to have the opportunities and the chances that we've had over the last 50 years.
Yeah, when you consider sort of the end all be all covenantal promises that we make of consecration of our time and our talents and abilities and everything. The fact that you may not, in the moment of creation, of production, you may not be thinking about that, but that the Lord is able to use you as an instrument in his hands. And by the way, an instrument can be either a hammer or a violin, and you guys have chosen the piano and the guitar as your instruments that you are in his hands. But yeah, to be able to look back, and it's not like we're ready to put you in a rest home, but let's face it, you're aging.
We certainly are.
But I mean, what a neat, again, it's kind of a humbling sense, I would think, that really when someone else points it out, a third party says, look, Kevin used the word pioneer, but he only said it because I was going to, and he said it first, but you really did pioneer a lot. And the simplicity is what underscores the spirit of creativity behind it, that the Lord is able to use you and me and anyone else that's watching this as a unique and discrete instrument. And whether Kevin's songs are born of GFC, repeat, 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 or whatever, and Joel's are much more poetic first and messagey, it doesn't matter. The fact is that through the spirit of consecration, these gifts that you've given back to the Lord and then to the world are just, what a great way to die. Like, like,
Let's not rush things.
no, but I hope you all invite me to talk at your funerals next
There
year,
you go.
because I just think it's, yeah, I mean, I know I'm gush boy over here, but you guys are my heroes. I know what you mean by simple music. Sometimes when I listen to the multi-layered produced big slick things that have been produced digitally in the past 20 years compared to a 4-track recorder and a kazoo that you guys were using, in 1980, it's like, yeah, it's different, but the message and the spirit is still so impactful.
I really love what you talked about, because we're all in a big symphony and we all have different sections, but we all play under the master conductor, as it's been pointed out in many areas. And we have to do the best we can in our little section.
Yeah. And so whether or not you achieve the levels of success of Afterglow or Michael McLean or even the Osmonds is irrelevant if you are consecrating your talent. It'll be appreciated and loved and honored and respected and thanked by the Savior at the exact same level as anyone who's made money off it or sold millions. I mean, well, that feels like a good place for me to end.
We're old. We're tired, probably.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the chance to be here, Scott.
It's been just such a pleasure. And again, you've got the podcast. I went to your website. Is it still afterglowmusic.com?
Mm-hmm.
The one that apparently was made in the 70s?
Yeah, I think it's closer to the 60s or before we were born.
The internet didn't exist when we built that website.
And your catalog, is it all available on Spotify?
Well, it's all available on Linktree.
Linktree.
Yeah, the tab does work. I noticed that. I got to do a couple of little modifications to get the podcast on, but the website will be changing. We're learning how to do that too. So it's DIY.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, so we're all going to look forward to continued creativity from Joel McCausland and Kevin Peay, a couple of Vikings from Pleasant Grove and Linden, who in the blink of an eye, really, as you fast forward through the years, are sitting with us now in their early to mid 60s and are just as relevant and meaningful. So thanks so much. And I'll look forward to maybe seeing you, Joel, later this week in Nashville.
That'd be great. We got to do that.
Kevin, you and I still have to embrace warmly sometime in the flesh.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, you guys. Talk to you soon. Hopefully.
See ya.
Hey, take care.
Bye-bye.